Welcome to State of the World, this emergency session with me, Sally Lockwood in Dubai.
And me, Tara Palmeri in New York. Sally, last night I went to bed around 1 a.m. and you woke up in Dubai, and I can only imagine what was flashing through your mind, considering you live about an hour flight away from Tehran, 756 miles for Americans, a little over 1,000 kilometers for those of you on the metric scale out there. But I mean, this is your neighbors, really. Iran being, bombed not just in one nuclear facility, the Fardo facility that we thought President Trump might be targeting, but three. What is the mood right now on the ground in the Middle East?
Yeah, it's huge news, Tara. When I woke up this morning, it was around 6 a.m. and I think it had happened around 3 hours before for us. I couldn't believe it. I did actually get word last night, just to paint the picture. I had taken my toddler swimming and it was early evening in Dubai, and I received a message with intelligence from someone to suggest that the US were going to join Israel and attack Iran overnight. And honestly, I dismissed it. I didn't even bother telling you, Tara, because I just really didn't see it happening. And then fast forward,
even with the bombers moving and all of the aircraft.
Yeah. Do you know what
I thought they were posturing?
Yeah, and I think as well, this region has been very worried and it's been on edge. I would say it's felt tense. But when Donald Trump came out on Friday, I think it was, and said that he wasn't going to make a decision for 2 weeks on whether the US would join Israel in attacking Iran, that really did feel like it took the temperature down a few notches, and people relaxed a bit. I certainly did. And I didn't think for a second that it was going to happen this soon if America did get involved. So when I heard that intelligence last night, I just thought, nah, it's not going to happen, and kind of dismissed it. Didn't even bother telling you. And then I woke up this morning and it was spot on. They were absolutely right. America joined Israel in attacking Iranian nuclear facilities last night. And I have to say, I think there was a sense of shock. People didn't necessarily think it was going to happen that fast, if it was going to happen at all. I think a lot of people thought that Donald Trump had bought himself some time, because actually he would have rather find a diplomatic solution and continued to negotiate. So I think there was a sense of real surprise that America took this action overnight. And certainly there is a lot of concern now here in the region that it could escalate and become a wider conflict, because of course the big question is, we just don't know how Iran is going to react to this.
Right. And there is this perception, and even in the United States and the media, of taco. Trump always chickens out, right? This is kind of the meme, you could say, that's been used against him for how he handled the tariff war, the trade wars, how he handles a lot of veiled threats. He ends up backing out at the last minute. So people thought maybe with Iran, this would be the same case. And he usually gives himself a 2-week deadline before he backs out of something, assuming that the American public has shifted its attention as he creates chaos and a new, war and a new conflict in, stateside, frankly. But this was different. I agree with you. Eric and I, my producer, we were talking about, okay, what are we going to slot in for Sunday night for our typical show? And we said, now that President Trump has announced the 2-week, deadline, I think we have some time to do some other sort of political reporting. But yeah, no, this is what happened. And I've got to say, I thought of you. I turned on Sky News last night and I've become a huge fan of your network. And I know you were broadcasting live all night, for us, all day for you. And what are your sources telling you in Iran about what it feels like there, what they're worried about? Is there radiation leakage? Because that's the thing with Iran, the Republic of Iran, they always kind of downplay the effects of these strikes and attacks. But what is it that you're actually feeling and hearing from people that are actually on the ground there?
Well, I've spoken to an Iranian woman today who lives in Dubai. There's quite a big Iranian community here. Around 500,000 people are estimated to have moved here from Iran. And, she's just so upset. She said they're all so emotional. And most of that is because they just can't get hold of their families and friends back in Iran, because there's been these internet blackouts.
Mm,
So she said to me that she tells her friends and family, if you get internet signal, just send me one word. Even, if it doesn't make any sense, just send me something so that I know you're okay. And this
right.
morning, she said she woke up to the words Fordo hit, which is, of course,
Mm,
that nuclear facility buried deep inside a mountain in Iran. And she said as soon as she opened her eyes, she checked her phone, she saw that message, and she knew. She knew that the US had got involved because, of course, it's been widely talked about that the US was essential for Israel in terms of being able to strike this nuclear facility because it's buried so deep inside a mountain that the US was the only military that would be able to help them with these, unique bunker busting bombs that we've been talking about. And so she knew, and she said she's just been really worried, not just about her friends and family in Iran, but also about what it means for the region. She said one of the reasons she moved here to the UAE is because it is so safe. It prides itself as being one of the safest countries in the world. And you really do feel that here. It feels like an extremely safe, secure place to live. The lifestyle's great. That's why people move here. Of course, it is very close to Iran. But, people here experience the freedom and security that they would never experience in Iran. And she said that she's just deeply worried about everyone back in her home country. She said her heart is still there, even though she's chosen to make her life here. And I
mm,
think that speaks for a lot of Iranian people. She said, there's also Iranian visitors who came to Dubai on holiday or for a visit. And they've become stranded here because the airspace over Iran is now closed. They can't fly home. And actually, the response here in the UAE to people who have been stranded has been really amazing.
mm,
Iranian restaurants have opened their doors. They're feeding them for nothing until they're able to return home. There's hotels that are offering them free rooms. And even
mm.
the UAE government has waived any visa overstay fines just so that they can stay until this situation calms down. I guess it's just that we don't know when that's going to be. There was a sense, I guess, of just huge concern that now the US has got involved. Will that mean that this conflict has a quicker resolution, that it's over more swiftly, or could it just make things even worse and we now could see escalation? That's what people are really worried about.
I know because America has so many military bases in the Middle East. We have so many men still stationed abroad, servicemen, and the Iranians have threatened them. They have threatened them. They are now targets, and I think that's what so many people in the U.S. are upset about, especially this America First MAGA coalition that elected President Donald Trump with the promise that we would not get back into foreign wars. I mean, it was President Trump himself who ran on the idea that George W. Bush brought us into pointless foreign wars. And now he's saying this is just a precision strike. We're in, we're out. We crushed it. We're, this and that. Maybe we'll have to go in again. I mean, he at least conceded that. But how does the rest of the world see this? Do they see this as America engaging in war with Iran? Or do they just see this as sort of like what happened in Syria when they dropped, the mother of all bombs on, a facility, one of the military facilities in Syria, and then we never engaged again. And that was in response to the chemical weapons attack by Assad. Well, how is the rest of the world seeing this? Or did they say, you know what, U.S. is involved in Iran and this is spin by President Trump?
No, I think the language that they're using publicly is being very carefully chosen at the moment to stay as diplomatic as possible, to keep the heat out of this situation. But I think behind closed doors, there's a lot of concern that the US has got involved in a war and people don't know how this is going to end. I should say that the majority of Gulf and Arab nations that we've heard from today, well, all the Gulf and Arab nations that we've heard from today have condemned this involvement in Iran.
Mm.
And they're calling for a peaceful resolution. They're calling for dialogue. They're calling for de-escalation. The president of the UAE has spoken to the leaders of Kuwait, the leaders of Saudi and Qatar today, and they all share the same view that essentially they want to see dialogue and de-escalation. This is not something that they want spilling over into a wider conflict because, as you say, there's American military personnel, around 40,000 of them, dotted around this region in different countries. There's a huge air base in Qatar. There's a much smaller one here in the UAE. Iraq has a large number of American troops. So does Kuwait, Bahrain, and I guess the big concern is that Iran could potentially carry out an attack on US military assets in the region, and no host nation of US military infrastructure or US troops, no host nation in this country wants to see something like that arrive on their own soil. So that's I think the primary concern, but they're also really concerned about not just the security implications, but also the economic implications of this. Everyone really wants the temperature to come down. I'm just not sure anyone really knows yet how or if that's going to happen. What are you hearing over in Washington? How do you think things sound? Does this sound like they're getting involved in another war?
They're trying to spin it in a way that it's not. I mean, you had Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor on CBS this morning, really trying to lower the temperature to make this seem like it's an isolated attack, that they saw an opening and they believed it was the right time to go in, but this is not war with Iran. I mean, because it's also a political thing at this point. But you do see Trump's MAGA allies saying, like Charlie Kirk and Stephen Bannon, they're all saying that this is something that President Trump had to do, and they're trying to kind of shape the message and keep his political supporters in line. I texted with Stephen Bannon last night and I said, how did you know about the how did you know about the attacks before everyone else? And he just texted me back, party is on. Now, he was at the White House on Thursday, so he's been obviously kept apprised of all these movements because he's seen as the standard bearer of this MAGA movement, of the base of President Trump's party. He needs to keep everyone on message and feeling like President Trump is doing the right thing. I think that's really difficult because if you actually look at this coalition, it's a lot of libertarians, a lot of anti-establishment people, a lot of former Bernie bros who were united under one ethos of America First, which applies literally to everything from foreign policy to the economy to, domestic issues. So it's a hard needle to thread. You know what I mean? Sorry, it's a hard thread to needle. Can I say that again?
No,
Did I say it wrong?
It's a hard needle to thread was right.
I said it the right way. So yeah, it's a hard needle to thread for President Trump when he's dealing with his own base. I mean, he's not up for re-election, but they have a midterm election in 2026, right? And I did think it was very interesting, Sally, and I'm sure you've noticed this to yourself, but the President of the United States, the buck stops with him, right? When he goes up and he gives that address to the nation at 10 p.m. Eastern time, right, on a Saturday, he's not by himself, like how other presidents have been before when they explain strikes, or when, President Obama came out and said, we had, announced victory, right? It's just, he went out there with Pete Hegseth, he went out there with J.D. Vance, and he went out there with Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
3 of the rising stars in the Republican Party and the standard bearers of the MAGA movement. Is he diffusing?
It was quite a moment, wasn't it? That press conference. It was quite a moment.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know. I feel like it goes against everything that Donald Trump campaigned on about taking the US out of foreign wars, about essentially looking inwards rather than outwards, not making the world's issues their own problem. And I just find it really interesting that he's made this decision and it came far sooner than many expected. Are you hearing how that came about, Tara?
He was pressured by Netanyahu. And I don't know if, you probably don't get Fox News in the UAE, but Fox News is President
I watch
Trump's-
on YouTube sometimes.
Okay. So Netanyahu's on Fox News calling President Trump a decisive leader. He's saying, I'm the junior partner. We need him in there. Fox News is keeping up the drumbeat, trying to explain why this is a good idea. President Trump has long believed that the U.S. should focus on taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities in 2011, a book he wrote, Time to Get Tough. He said that should be President Trump, that should be America's number one focus in Iran, is destroying the nuclear facility. So this is like the one moment where I think he breaks with his own America First policy. But here's what I'm curious about. What about our allies in Europe, our NATO allies? How are they interpreting this? Are they worried they're going to get dragged into the Middle East with the U.S. again? Are they concerned that President Trump is just been dragged into the war by Israel?
Well, I mean, after Israel got involved in these strikes on Iran, European leaders have been holding talks with Iran to try and find a way forward. And it just doesn't feel like they've been given enough time to do that before the US carried out this military intervention. The UK has been really clear, though. They've wanted to make it very known that they had no involvement in this strike or these strikes overnight by the US, which I think is really interesting. They don't want any association with it in that respect. And Keir Starmer certainly is calling for de-escalation and stability in the region. I think there is a lot of concern about the repercussions of this. For instance, without getting too technical, there is a very narrow waterway between here and Iran, between Oman and Iran, which is called the Strait of Hormuz. Now, a huge portion of the world's energy supply flows through that from the Persian Gulf, basically out into the ocean, almost a quarter of the world's oil. Now, Iran has threatened many times to close the Strait of Hormuz, and in response to Western sanctions, especially against anything that America might have inflicted on them. Anyway, the Iranian parliament has said that it agrees with closing the Strait of Hormuz, and that's happened today. That would have enormous economic repercussions, not just for this region, but it would send economic shockwaves around the world. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen. Iranian state television are reporting that it has to be approved by Iran's Supreme National Security Council, this decision to close the Strait of Hormuz. But if that were to happen, the whole world would feel it. But interestingly, a lot of their oil now goes to China. And it could be that China actually manages to have some sort of influence here in whether this decision is made or not. But certainly that's something that a lot of people are watching in terms of something that Iran could do. If it's not going to retaliate against American assets in the region, it could threaten that. So let's see. I think that there's a lot that could happen. I think it just feels very unpredictable, and it feels like it's moving really fast, Tara.
There's so many developments going on. Please keep checking in to State of the World at State of the World on YouTube. Sally is obviously working her sources in the Middle East and in Europe, and I'm working my sources in the US. And this is a developing story. You can see updates, shorts on our page as things break. Sally will be on Sky News and also be putting out shorts on the page. Anything can
and we'll
happen.
be working around the clock, Tara. I mean, the great thing about us hosting this podcast between two different corners of the planet is that when I'm going to bed, you're getting up, which is what's happening right now. So I should say I'm really sorry about my lighting. It's been a long day here on air for Sky, doing radio hits, and now I'm obviously speaking to you guys. And I literally just it got dark, so I closed the curtains, stuck the camera on, and I think I look really washed out. So look, apologies for how I might look, but thanks so much for tuning in.
You look gorgeous, don't worry.
I hope you enjoyed our update. We will definitely be keeping you posted on this story. There's a lot happening. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys. Please comment, share the page with your friends. We're trying to build this up. We're very close to our 1,000 follower mark, subscribers. We appreciate all of your support. We just started this a few months ago, but we want to keep going, and we can only do it with your help.
Thank you so much for your support, guys. We really appreciate it. We will see you soon.